Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. Is that ridiculous enough for you? War is not just fought on physical battlegrounds. War is fought on the battleground of perception. We each build up the positives for our side, take all of our flaws, and imagine that they exist only in the enemy. And thus we distort the image of the enemy and turn it into a target. Why? Because it has obvious sins. Whose sins are they? They're actually our sins that we're looking in a mirror to see. What in the world am I talking about? Why did this come up? A second Malaysian flight has gone down. 298 people have been killed. Originally, it was estimated at 295, and then they found that 3 babies hadn't been accounted for and were killed. According to the people I run into, we should be taking Russia to the World Court and charging it with war crimes. Why? Because it is clear to us that the Russians have done this. How do we know this? Because only the Russians have the BUK missiles it takes to shoot down a plane flying at 33,000 feet. The BUK missile, which comes on a mobile launcher that has tubes for 4 different missiles, can shoot down a plane flying as high as 72,000 feet. The Malaysian flight was flying at 33,000 feet. Because it takes considerable training to train a crew to operate the BUK missiles, the reasoning on our side says that it is unlikely that the Russian-supported rebels in the Ukraine themselves have BUK missiles. What other evidence is there that the Russians have shot this passenger plane out of the sky, or that the Russian-supported rebels have shot it out of the sky? Only one side has been shooting down planes. That's the Russian-supported side. If you can believe the Ukrainians, I mean, we know that the Russian-supported Ukrainians crowed with victory over shooting down several Ukrainian helicopters. Then, in the last week, they have shot down, someone has shot down 2 Ukrainian Air Force jets. According to the Ukrainians, one of them was shot down in a dogfight with a Russian fighter jet, which smacked it with an air-to-air missile. Only the Russians have fighter jets. The Russian-supported rebels do not have fighter jets, but there's a complication here. The fighter jets on both sides are Sukhoi fighter jets. They're both Russian-made. There's another complication. That is that, according to the Russians, it is not just Russians and possibly Russian-supported rebels who have BUK missiles. It's the Ukrainians who have BUK missiles. Hence, the Ukrainians shot this plane out of the sky, according to Russian accounts. Let me read you something from Pravda. It will give you the Russian point of view, and it sounds as detailed and as well-reasoned as our points of view. Pravda says, on July 15th, a division of BUK missile systems of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Kiev, our side, was deployed in the area of Donetsk. The firing range of the BUK missile system reaches 43 kilometers. The Boeing 777 of Malaysia Airlines was flying at the height of 10,600 kilometers. Representatives of the breakaway republics of Ukraine, the breakaway republics are the Russian-supported rebels, said that the militias had neither such weapons nor skills for such an attack. The Ukrainian or the Russian-supported rebels say they don't have BUK missiles and they don't have the skills to operate a BUK missile battery. Back to Pravda RU. An aircraft flying at an altitude of 10,000 meters can be destroyed only with S-300 or BUK-type weapons. Militias do not and cannot have such systems at their disposal. Hence, the evidence is in. According to the Russians, the rebels could not possibly have shot this plane down. Who's left? Well, not the Russians. We know they would never do such a thing, right? If we're Russian. Who's left? Those swarthy varmints. Those brutal beaters, kidnappers, and rapists. They are actually referred to primarily as Nazis. The Nazi forces supported by the United States of America. We say the Russians should obviously be taken to the World Court for war crimes. The Russians say that we should obviously be taken to the World Court for war crimes. The Russians only read their interpretation of the news. We only read our interpretation of the news. Every time Russia says an evil deed has been performed here, we take it as an admission that they have performed evil deeds. That's not the way they take it. They take it as an accusation that we have performed evil deeds. The point of all this? Wars are fought on the battleground of perception. In Gaza right now, the forces of Hamas are deliberately using humans as human shields. They are placing all of their weapons. They are placing all of their ammunition stores underneath apartment buildings, schools, and hospitals. Why? Because the more civilians the Israelis are forced to kill, the greater the propaganda victory for Hamas, because the crueler and more vicious and more violent the Israelis are made to appear. Who's really killing all those civilians? It's Israeli weapons, but it's Hamas strategies. One side says it is Israelis killing 300 innocent Gazan civilians. The other side says that it is Hamas who's killing 300 innocent civilians by locating weapons underneath their homes deliberately. And when the Israelis make phone calls saying, "Get out of your house, we're about to attack it," Hamas says, "Stay in your house." This is simply Israeli propaganda. Why? Because Hamas wants the perception that the Jews are killers, crazed killers. Where is this war being fought? On the battleground of perception. He who controls the headlines wins the war. And in reality, the perception of one side demonizes the other side. The perception of the other side demonizes its enemy too. And it's important, if you really want to understand what's going on the news, to read the rhetoric of both sides. Or as Sun Tzu said, to defeat an enemy, walk in his shoes, become him. Become capable of thinking and feeling the way he does. What is this all about? Perception. Wars are won or lost in the headlines. Wars are won or lost in the battleground of perception, and you are capable of rising above that battleground and seeing things from more than just one point of view. This is Howard the Among Us, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how. Now, for that incredibly difficult, totally defeating, unbelievably elusive off button. I think I've got it.